This time, Tiven was then approached by guitarist Alan Durham about reforming Dumptruck with Austin musicians. Tiven was open to the idea, and they soon were joined by drummer George Duran, and it says here a cast of bass players. But then again, they are two a penny, as we know so well on this channel. Um,
Hey, everybody out there. Welcome back to another episode of the Audiophiles. Andy and John here, and it's time to dig into some music. So, John, you're going to be offering up something for me to go off and listen to. What have you got in the chamber?
Depending on how good your memory is, you may or may not have heard Struck remembers mentioning this band, Dumptruck.
I vaguely remember the name, but I know nothing about them aside from what you've referenced. So,
And that's how it should be.
yeah, okay.
In fact, I'm not going to tell anything about it in this episode either.
Well, I hope at the very least when I return from giving whatever song by them a listen. But what have you got
We'll
for me?
see. Depends on what you say. So the track is called Back Where I Belong.
Okay. All right. So Dumptruck, Back Where I Belong. Got everything I need. I guess I will go off, give this thing a listen, and come back and let you know what I think. And hopefully it's enough that you will expand on who they are and what they're about. So
What did you have in mind when everything fell apart? Would you pick up the pieces and start all over again? You know where dreams like that will take you. In any event, it makes no difference now. This is for the times you told me everything would go wrong. This is for the way you put me back where I belong. Where I belong.
interesting stuff. It starts with that really interesting, jaunty bass line that sounds like it's got like a touch of chorus effect injected into it. And then another guitar, or well, a guitar comes in, and it sounds like it's also got a touch of like flanger or chorus to it. And then this third distorted guitar comes in doing this sort of melodic line over the top of it. All sounds really, really good. The voice of the singer works very much with the track. It's nothing outstanding, but it kind of works perfectly for what this is, and the added second layer of vocals kinds of adds another dimension to the vocals as well, which is I don't know, not 100% sure if it's like much needed, but it certainly helps. You know what I mean? I'd have to hear it without, but I think it's helping the song by adding this added, I don't know, this added depth to the vocal tracks. So yeah, really interesting stuff, kind of catchy noodling on the strings. So yeah, I'm liking it so far.
Where the hell were you when I was all alone with 1,000 people asking me my name? You knew where all of that would lead me.
Pretty good stuff. The one thing that I will say that maybe it lacked for me a little bit was sound dynamics. Like we've talked a lot about like loud, quiet, loud, or quiet, loud, quiet. And this is kind of like one speed the whole way through with not a lot of shift in those dynamics, which, as good as the song is, creates, after like maybe a minute or so of hearing it, you feel like you've heard all that the song has to offer musically. Now luckily what it has to offer musically is good music. So it doesn't make it a bad song. It just, if I were to critique it in any way, I would say that um some more playing with the dynamics of the sound and the music would have maybe taken this up a little bit for me. But you can't deny that this is good, like, I don't know, like post-punk, college, rocky, new wavy stuff. That is pleasant to the ear. So, I mean, the guitar work was really cool and interesting. The effects that they employed were really cool and interesting. That bass line was very infectious. I mean, I'm sure that's a reason why they chose it to kind of bookend the song and kind of feature it throughout the tune as well. All in all, this is a really fun listen and a good song, with maybe just a couple, and it's probably just my own personal taste, things that I would have maybe, I don't know, dare I say, done differently. But I mean, these guys obviously had success to some degree. Their music was featured on MTV. I'm sure there are plenty of people that love this stuff, and I could say most assuredly that I like it. I just don't know if I'm as uh, gaga over it as I may have been if they had, added a bridge or done something with the sound to draw it in and then bolster it at times to kind of add an interesting dynamic juxtaposition. But all in all, really fun listen. They got a good sound to them. Loved the harmonies. The singer's got a good enough voice and certainly great, I would say, for this type of sound. So, yeah, my first listen to Dumb Truck, I enjoyed them. I don't really know much about these guys. I guess that's all part of this whole process for the most part. John typically offers up stuff that I've yet to hear. Now we then may expand on that band's oeuvre and dip into other songs and stuff, and I become more familiar with it. But given we are started at sort of ground zero with this one, I've got no background knowledge of Dump Truck, so I'd be interested to learn more about them and kind of obviously the era that this came out, because this isn't, I would most assuredly say, not contemporary, or at least like the last 15 or so years. At least that's my guess, unless they're really good at tapping into an older sound. But yeah, this was a lot of fun. I'd be interested to learn more about that. In order to do so, we're going to have to get back to John.
Hound of the Baskervilles, he's back. Just to explain that reference for viewers, while Andy went away, Andy knows all about this, I have a new dog, which I got from the RSPCA, a rescue dog, about 6 weeks ago. And at the moment, it's just me and him in the house. And he got very vocal while Andy popped off to listen to Dumb Truck. So I've let him back in. We're trying to keep him calm because he is a bit of a beast. He's a massive Doberman stroke husky stroke Great Dane stroke hound of Hades. He's a lovely dog, but when he decides to be a problem, he is a problem. So bear with us. So you've had to listen to Dumb Truck, Andy. What do you reckon?
So we get things started with this like quirky and jaunty bass line that appears to have just a touch of chorus effect injected into it, or at least that's what it sounds like. As a guy with a chorus pedal and a bass, kind of sounds like what we're working with here. Then with a short and quick roll of the snare drums, the drums join, and the beat drops. And then a guitar comes in, which also sounds like it is laden with a bit of chorus or flanger effect as it strums through these kind of warped sounding chords as a result of the aforementioned affectation. And then
Right.
maybe, yeah.
just I've listened to this for a number of years, but the first couple of times I ever heard it, I was thinking this is half guitar and half keyboard because it's got that kind of
Yeah, yeah,
weirdness to it, but it's clearly a
sure.
guitar, but it's
Yeah,
just a really interesting sort of effect.
it is. It is. And I like how the bass effect kind of foreshadows
Yeah,
or I don't or justifies the effect then used on the next guitar that enters. But then after that guitar comes another guitar, which has more of a distorted traditional distortion to it that
yeah.
is playing this sort of noodling this melodic motif kind of over top of the affected bass and other guitar and that aforementioned drum beat. And now the song is musically like fully realized, so naturally the singer joins the fray and begins delivering the first verse. And there's something interesting about the singer's voice the more I thought about it. Like there's something unpolished a little bit about its delivery. And what do I mean by unpolished is that like maybe at every so often it borders on maybe just being a little bit flat, and it certainly doesn't exhibit like a wide range or any sign of professional training. But this isn't a bad thing. It's just noticeable. And honestly, despite all that, um, it feels more organic and makes it feel even that much more sincere coming from the guy. And it also doesn't hurt that the rhythm guitarist was generous in offering supporting vocals throughout, which added a bit more texture and depth to just the overall vocals of the track in general. But yeah, they kind of grew on me as the song went on, and kind of like I don't know, I guess because of that aforementioned like natural sincerity, it sounded like charmed me a bit. So and it fit the song perfectly. So I mean, I dug it. Then after he delivers the lines, there is for all the times you told me everything would go wrong, this is for the way you put me back where I belong, where I belong. That melodic bit of lead guitar work returns all shaky and affected, warbling its way through the notation before transitioning into the next verse, which is then followed by a repeating of the chorus. Um, and the more I listen to these guitars, the more I'm reminded of the tone and the sound quality of the guitars from The Fall and other like early mid 80s new wave, college rock, kind of post punk bands. So, which is really weird because, like, unrelated to this at all, you just mentioned The Fall before we started recording, which I thought was really interesting because, like, that I was going to tie this sound to them because that's what came to mind when I heard this initially.
Yeah.
Um, After the chorus, the verse comes back around, and it would appear that lyrically it mirrors the first verse. And again, we get the chorus, and the song comes to an end. So this was a fairly decent song with some really redeeming parts to it, like the guitars and those tones and the effects used. The interesting little bass line that kind of bookends the song, which is a great choice because it's a really cool bass line. Um, but there is this, if I were to give one critique to the song, there is a bit of this samishness that plagues it a bit, where I would argue that, you know, if you heard the first minute or so of the music, you heard all of the music to the song for the most part. And that is a quality of music that can be hit or miss. I mean, I know other bands that have written songs like that in the past, and many of them I've enjoyed, and I enjoyed this song. But I do think that like there could be more use of like or toying around with dynamics in this song. Like for instance, we've talked so much about loud, quiet, loud, or quiet, loud, quiet. And this was kind of like the same the whole way through. There was no sort of manic shift in the feel of the music or the volume or how much, you know, oomph there were to certain parts versus others. And maybe if it injected that just a little bit of that into it, it would have added this extra layer of, you know, dynamics to the song that I felt it lacked a little bit. But I mean, aside from that minor qualm, I think this was a really good song and I enjoyed listening to it. Now, I'm going to go out on a limb and assume that because, you know, we haven't heard from these guys yet on the channel, you're just now bringing them to me, and I haven't heard of them at all outside of a reference to them by you, that maybe this is a, dare I say, close to one hit wonder, or like somebody that didn't have a large pool or catalog to pull from. But I'd be interested to learn more about them. That's all supposition and me making assumptions on things. So you could totally blow my mind and be like, no, they've got 2 greatest hits albums or something like that. But I'd be interested to learn more about them because I'm working with pretty much nothing over here, though I am digging their sound.
Yeah, interesting. There's a couple of reasons why I brought this band and this track well, the track is probably my favorite one by them, but the band, a couple of interesting things, but we'll get into that.
All right.
So they were formed in Boston, Massachusetts, which is in the United States of America, in 1983 by Seth Tiven and Kirk Swan. Tiven is the main songwriter and the only constant member of the band. And he moved to Boston in 81, and he performed in a few local bands with Swan and a drummer called Mark McCulhey, and they actually formed Dumptruck kind of by accident in 1983. The duo recorded like 6 songs in a studio with McCulhey on the drums. Swan says they were demos really more than anything else. Seth and I played bass on each other's songs, which is how we would tackle the songs live in this incarnation of the band. They were so pleased with the results that the duo then recorded 6 more songs with a different drummer called James Clement, and then they released the 12 songs as their debut album, D is for Dumptruck, in 1983. And I believe I moved it because of the dog. D is for Dumptruck. There we go.
Oh, that's cool.
So yeah, that is them. Now, the record was really well received. The New Trouser Press record guy said the dozen songs fall somewhere between Joy Division and the DBs, both bands of which we featured on the channel. The duo added Sean Devlin on drums and Steve Mitchener on bass for live performances, and then they signed to Big Time Records, and that new lineup then recorded the second album, Positively Dumptruck. Mitch Easter's drive-in studio in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, with Don Dixon producing. So Mitch Easter, Don Dixon, these are characters we've come across before in early REM and etc. etc. The record was a big hit on college radio, and Dumptruck won the Best Independent Album Award at the Boston Music Awards. So this lineup, just to reinforce it, Seth Tiven, guitar vocals, Kirk Swan, guitar vocals, Steve Mitchener, bass, Sean Devlin, drums. So Steve Mitchener left straight after this album came out, and then he went to another band we featured on this channel called Big Dipper. We covered All Going Out Together, which was suggested by my friend Rob last year, from the Heavens album. And that album actually came out the year after this album. And yeah, and Steve was so very kind to actually drop a line in the comments saying how much he appreciated us doing it. So, friend of the channel, whether he likes it or not, he is now. So there we go. I will now go over the lyrics of the song. There's nowhere that features the lyrics. I had to listen to it all, but it's really clear actually, and I had no problem, discerning what he's saying and writing it down. So, hats off to him. What did you have in mind when everything fell apart? Would you pick up the pieces and start all over again? You know where dreams like that will take you. In any event, it makes no difference now. This is for the times you told me everything would go wrong. This is for the way you put me back where I belong. Where I belong. And then you got that mini sort of guitar break, which almost sounds like a bloody Casio or stylophone, the way it's done, but very still guitar-y. Where the hell were you when I was all alone, with 1,000 people asking me my name? You knew where all of that would lead me. In any event, it makes no difference now. This is for the times you told me everything would go wrong. This is for the way you put me back where I belong. Then there's a bit of a longer guitar break. And then comes back in. What did you have in mind when everything fell apart? Would you pick up the pieces and start all over again? You know where dreams like that will take you. In any event, it makes no difference now. This is for the times you told me everything would go wrong. This is for the way you put me back where I belong. This is for the times you told me everything wrong. This is for the way you put me back where I belong. Where I belong. So yeah, it's a really, I think it's a decent sort of college radio sort of track. It's of its time, that mid-80s. It's of that great American sound that I loved so much back then, of the likes of REM and others were doing, um, foraging their different sort of paths through it. But I mean, it's just really nice, catchy, great stuff.
Yeah.
I'd say the band sort of fragmented a little bit. Another personnel came in. The third album, For the Country, was released in 1987 to highly positive reviews. AllMusic Guy gave the album 4.5 stars out of 5, saying that these are Tiven's strongest and most well-crafted songs yet, without coming across as slick or over-processed. Highly recommended. However, during the tour to support the album, the band discovered that Big Time Records, who they were signed to, were in financial difficulties when checks issued by the label started to bounce.
Mm.
During a meeting with the label owner Fred Bestal, band learned that the label had failed to renew the band's contract prior to its expiration date. So obviously contracts for a certain amount of time, and they didn't renew it before it ended. So officially, no record deal. In early '88, the band learned that Big Time was negotiating to sell Dumptruck's contract to Phonograph Records. However, technically, they didn't actually own their contract. So the band's lawyer sent Phonograph a copy of the expired contract with a letter instructing the label to negotiate directly with the band.
Yeah.
When Big Time discovered that the band was attempting to negotiate directly with Phonogram, the label sued Dumptruck for breach of contract, requesting $5 million in damages and threatening the other label with $10 million lawsuit for torturous interference. Phonogram and subsequently other labels all declined to sign a contract with the band until the suit was resolved. They obviously didn't want to get, embroiled in any sort of legal bullshit. And it sounds like Big Time were just chancing their arm, really.
But breach contract, though, it's like, what contract? You allowed it to expire, so there's some.
But you need to go through the legal process to prove all that. And so it left the band with no means to record or release, new material for 3 years. And after $40,000 in legal fees, Dumptruck received a default judgment against Big Time Records when the label's attorneys failed to appear in court for a hearing. The band, which had filed a countersuit, was awarded $240,000, very little of which it ever received from the now bankrupt label. What a surprise. Yeah, and they also were ordered the rights to a Big Time recording. However, after one of the creditors of Big Time Records filed a lien for the rights to Dumptruck's master recordings, the band just went sod it, broke up in 1991, and Tiven moved to Austin, Texas, and worked as a computer programmer. I mean, it's getting really silly and nasty at this point, isn't it? And I'm sure it took all the joy out of it.
Yeah, I was gonna say it probably sucked every bit of their love for the music out of it because the industry is so goddamn tainted. That sucks.
Yeah. And thankfully, something like that probably wouldn't happen so much now. It's be much harder to go because the labels don't have as much power as they used to that way.
Yep.
Anyway, the songs that were recorded by the band during this period from '88 to '91 were eventually released as Days of Fear in 1994 on Unclean Records. At this time, Tiven was then approached by guitarist Alan Durham about reforming Dumptruck with Austin musicians. Tiven was open to the idea, and they soon were joined by drummer George Duran, and it says here a cast of bass players. But then again, they are two a penny, as we know so well on this channel. Tiven and Durham still make up the core of Dumptruck, and they play in Austin, Texas, and occasionally do shows in the Northeast with some of the original members as well, which is quite nice. So when he sort of goes around, he picks up there with his mates. Since relocating to Austin, Dumptruck have released 4 new albums, the most recent called Wreck in 2018.
No shit.
So from the original members, Salem has released 6 solo recordings and has worked as a guitarist, vocalist, and producer or engineer with artists including Emmylou Harris, Yola Tango, Mercury Rev, and Mooney Suzuki. I don't really know that last artist. I'd love to think it was a relation to Damo, but it isn't. Right. Anyway, in 1999, Swan released a solo album entitled It's About Time. And in 10 years later, in 2009, he released a second solo album, It's Only Me. And in 2007, Tiven released a solo recording entitled apparently solitude. Dumptruck continues to perform occasional shows in the Austin area, which I think is quite nice. They're just like he's keeping his hand in, and they're just doing bits when they feel
Well,
like it.
It's funny that a musician went to, left Boston or the Northeast and went down to Austin to do computer stuff, and the two healthiest industries in Austin, Texas are music and, computers and programming and
It shows
creating.
well then.
Yeah. Pretty good landing spot because he can dip his
Yeah.
fingers in both those waters if he wants to, which is great. Good for him. And good for them to continue to kind of get out there and still do stuff. Because a city like Austin and its inhabitants would still be really appreciative of that, of them, whether it's creating new stuff, which they clearly are, or tapping into the old stuff. There's enough of a music loving fan base down there to, fill nightclubs or bars and stuff like that. And so that's good landing spot for sure.
Yeah, I heard good things about Austin, Texas. So
Yeah.
It's a really nice cultural place.
Yeah,
So yeah, that's Dumptruck. It's just a great sort of college radio type band. It's got that sort of indie American sound, which harkens back to, as they mentioned, a sort of new wavy post-punk type bands. And the Fall would definitely be one that I would put in that category as well, and certain sort of sounds to them. But DBs as well. I can hear that and other stuff, which is great.
Totally. Yeah, great
Brilliant.
bands.
I will wrap things up.
Okay.
And say thanks for listening to this, folks out there. Any Dumptruck fans? By the way, Steve, if you ever get to see this, please drop us a line. Let us know how you're doing. Regards to all the rest of the band, big fans. If you like this, please do hit the like button and drop some comments about Dumptruck, about this track, about the albums, anything else you want us. We love hearing from you guys and all your insightful and irrelevant postings. Both of them make our days. So yeah, please do. If you haven't subscribed already, please do. And when we finally got enough, then maybe we can make it out to Austin, Texas. Although I suspect it will cost me slightly more than Andy. That being said, thanks again so much for watching. And we'll see all of you on the next episode of the Audiophiles.
See you later, guys.